Shalom everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. We're up to page 302 of volume 2 of Rabbi Avigdor Miller's new translation and commentary of Duties of the Mind. And we are in Sha'ar HaBakina, the gate of examining. And again, we're going to be looking at the mind, but this time around we're going to be looking at the ability to reason, the ability to have reasoning. Without that ability, we're going to soon find out that we'll be in deep trouble. In fact, we wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for the ability to reason. Okay, so let's get into it. This is part 14 of chapter 5. Hashem's greatest gift to us is our intellect and our power of discernment. So his greatest gift to us is our intellect and our power of discernment. To know or to learn what's going on around us. And to take on that learning and put it into practice. It enables us to essentially learn how to live, learn how to function in a given day, which is set apart from all other creatures. So this gift of intellect and discernment is the chief characteristic. Well, it's really the only characteristic, because a lot of the other animals can do things physically that we can do, and you could argue even better than we can do, or certainly a bird can fly. And, you know, unless we apply technology through the use of our secular intellect to make a plane, a human being can't fly, and a chimpanzee can probably get themselves through the jungle a lot quicker than a human being can. But what no animal can attest to is the gift of intellect, the sekel, and the ability to discern, and the ability to reflect and think about things. There is no need to explain the importance of our sekel, our intellect, as its value is not concealed from us. Its value is not concealed from us. It is evident in the behavior of our bodies and how we arrange the movements of our bodies and our limbs, except in the case of someone who has lost his sekel because of an injury to his brain. So we all pretty much walk the same way. Nobody's sort of getting around on their hands. You know, the way Hashem has arrayed the human anatomy, the best way for movement is to use our legs to do that. And to manipulate things, we use our hands, unless a person hasn't been gifted with legs or tragically, heaven forbid, has lost their legs at some time, and then they learn to do things with their hands that they would otherwise do with their legs. But you can see, looking around you, at the way people actually just function on a basic level, that their sekel enables them to do that. You know, a baby learns to walk, and you don't normally find a baby learning to walk with their hands. They learn to walk with their feet. They work out, okay, I've got these legs here. What are they meant to do? Okay, look, I can see mum and dad doing it like that. I'll copy that. It looks like the way to go. Okay, so it is evident in our bodies and how we arrange the movements of our bodies and our limbs, except in the case of someone who has lost his sekel because of an injury to the brain. So, you know, you see people in the street, they're not all there, and they put themselves in places of danger, but they don't know what they're doing because they've lost the ability to discern. The person may have suffered an accident that caused him to become deprived of the ability to think properly and become self-destructive. He may lie down in a cold street and freeze to death. His loss of mental function results in him having less of a sense to save himself. It is only because of our reason that we're able to take care of ourselves. And so, you know, if somebody comes near a sheer drop of a cliff, they see that if they get any closer, it's going to be dangerous, and if there's a sudden gust of wind, they're going to be blown off the cliff and they're going to not be having a very good day. Somebody who has, you know, lost their ability to think clearly may not see that as an issue, and therefore they're sort of in more danger if they come near the edge, as would be the case with a small child. However, the qualities that we can achieve by means of the sekel are exceedingly numerous. One of these qualities is the very great accomplishment of becoming aware that there is an all-wise creator. And out of all the animal species in the world, mankind is the only species that can recognize his creator and have potentially have a relationship with him. Although most people think about Hashem and are willing to say that he is all-knowing and all-wise, they do not put a lot of thought into it. But when they study Shah HaBakina, the gate of examining, but when we study the gate of examining, we begin to realize how everything in the world is made with wisdom and with benevolence. The mind gains a picture of Hashem as a great father and great benefactor. We then see him as the, so there is a Hebrew concept called Natan, and this is a sort of a giver, a very selfless giver, I think you could translate that as. As it says, he gives nourishment to all flesh, and he gives snow like wool. And so those quotations are there from the book of Psalms 136, verse 25, and Psalm 147, verse 16. And he gives rain upon the face of the earth. As we realize these things, we think of Hashem in a meaningful way as the all-wise, all-knowing master of the world. These thoughts are tremendous achievement for us. The main purpose of our lives, we fulfill the purpose. We fulfill that purpose when we utilize our minds to gain his awareness and to realize how much we have to thank Hashem for our sanity and for giving us the ability to achieve this all-important function through the power of thought. Incidentally, if you go to university, they're going to teach you the opposite. They're going to teach you the opposite of that. Having a conscious and rational mind makes it possible for us to feel that we are in the presence of an all-wise creator who is everlasting and unchanging, and who is the one and only, as we say from the Aleinu prayer that is recited, there is nothing beside him, who preceded all because he is the first and all existence came into being from him. Who is infinite in power, who is not bound by time, that is, he is not subject to any limitations of time, nor is he bound by space, who is exalted above all human qualities or measures, and is too sublime to be fully grasped by the thoughts of human beings. However, for those who succeed in using their minds to gain these attitudes, he is always part of their thoughts. With the power of reason, we are also able to appreciate that he is merciful because he has pity on his creatures. He is gracious because he grants his favor to those who are undeserving, giving them gifts that they have not earned. And he is benevolent. He is good to his creatures, not only supplying them with their needs, but also but doing so in a manner that delights them. Doing so in a manner that delights them. Not only does he give them food, he provides it in beautiful, colorful packages like apples and oranges. He also makes the food have a pleasing taste. We also understand that there is nothing to which he can be compared, and there is nothing in the world that can compare to him. That means Hashem is unique in every aspect. So if Hashem so chose, he could make all food of the earth taste the same. Like there would have been no variety in the actual taste and the flavor and perhaps even the smell of all food. It all smells the same. He may have provided the food in a way that it all looks the same. The texture of the food is the same. So there's no variety in the food, nor in smell, look, or touch. To procreate, he could have arranged for a man to simply touch the nose of his wife and squeeze it for longer than 30 seconds. And then she's pregnant. And that would have been how we procreate. And during that process of squeezing his wife's nose, neither of them feel any pleasure except the wife perhaps feeling a little bit uncomfortable because she's having a nose squeeze, not hard, but hard enough for 30 seconds. And so Hashem says, no, I'm not going to make life like that. I'm going to make life enjoyable, and I'm going to put a richness to things and a variety of things. I'm going to have diversity, a word that has been used in this current generation, this last generation, to devastating effect, and is really sort of dragging the world into a Sodom and Gomorrah type scenario. But it's a valid thing when it's attached to a valid cause. When we use our minds to acquire these attitudes, it is a tremendous achievement. How grateful we should feel when we say, "Blessed are you, Hashem, who favors us with knowledge." That we can use our minds to cause such a great success in our lives. It's the biggest gift. Even if we have not succeeded in fully absorbing the deep truths behind the words describing Hashem's qualities, we should rejoice that we have the sekel to at least say and hear the words. Whether you can, really think deeply about what you're saying or not. I mean, at least you're able to know that there's some depth there, even if it's a depth you're not able to actually physically traverse yourself. If a person has in his mind the thought that Hashem is Rakum Vikanun, which is basically merciful. The best translation would be to say that meant merciful and rewarding occupants despite their achievements, and that He is the benefactor of all. That alone is extremely worthwhile. It pays to be alive just for that alone, to have a mind that can think such things. It is a wonderful gift just to be able to speak of Hashem's greatness, as it says, quoting Psalm 145:6, "And of your greatness I shall tell, even though we can never truly grasp it," as it says, again quoting Psalm 145:3, "And to His greatness there is no searching out." So there'll be no end to the searching out of His greatness if one chose to embark on that journey. The great gift of sekel gives us the ability to practice inductive reasoning, the ability to understand the general concepts that are implied by many individual phenomena. By observing and thinking about the many ways in which Hashem shows His greatness and His goodness in the world around us, we gain some comprehension about how great He is and how good He is. It is the successful achievement of life when people begin to become aware of the greatness of Hashem. So instead of just looking around at the world with sort of this blank kind of expression, you're seeing something that has been created, and it's as if the Creator just recently walked away from the thing that He made. And so by looking at the thing that He made, you can get an impression of who He is. We must be deeply grateful for having been given the mental apparatus that helps us achieve this great purpose of our lives. Also, among the benefits of the sekel is that with our sekel, our intellect, we can think into the details of this study and understand, number one, some of Hashem's wisdom, and number two, His power, and number three, His great mercy and kindness that pervades the universe. So if these three thoughts are things that are foreign to you, I will tell you this as almost a guarantee. I won't fully guarantee it, but if you twist my arm, I'll guarantee it. If you're not fully aware of these three principles, Hashem's wisdom, His power, and His kindness, then you're going to be a person that's plagued with sadness and depression on and off throughout your life. You're going to be a person that's plagued with sadness, despondency, depression, all kinds of feelings of inadequacies and different fears and all these sorts of things, because you won't allow Hashem's wisdom and His power and His kindness to be things that you will actually venture out and contemplate at length from day to day. We have the ability not merely make a general statement that Hashem is all-knowing, but we are able to study detailed aspects of His wisdom, as we are doing right now in Shah HaBakina, the Gate of Examining. The more we do so, the more we are impressed by the lessons that Hashem is teaching us, as it says, and this is quoting from, again, Psalm 145, 10 through 12 is the entire verse. But the highlight here is the statement, all your works praise you, Hashem. All your works praise you, Hashem. You know, a line that most Christians are abundantly familiar with, but probably never actually thought, how does that actually really happen? Obviously, it's not literal. You know, we can't see trees acknowledging Hashem at least as a human being does, because trees aren't imbued with vocal cords or the ability to move quite like a human is, and they're not an organic thing. They're a mineral or a vegetable. I don't know. They're just different to a man, even though they're often used as metaphors for people. We see that. Everything in the world is made for a purpose of teaching us about the wisdom, the kindness, and the greatness of Hashem. We learn to appreciate how Hashem does things that we couldn't do, even if we had the most elaborate mechanism. Hashem achieves fantastic results in the flash of a second without any heat and without any pressure. For instance, there are certain enzymes that can accomplish chemical process that ordinarily would need extreme high temperatures. However, since the body is not able to tolerate such temperatures, these processes are carried out with a minimum of heat. So there are certain things that have to take place in your body that ordinarily, according to the laws of physics and science and biology, they would need like a temperature, that would be quite hot. But because we're talking about something that occurs in the human body, and we don't want the human body to be damaged in an attempt for it to able to perform a process, it carries it out. It carries that same job out without the chemicals in the body attaining that heat. No scientist can even remotely imitate the achievements that we see constantly working in our bodies and in nature all around us. Wherever we look, we can see the kindness of Hashem in nature. Everything in the universe is made to help mankind exist successfully and happily. And that's an important point to keep in mind. If we study all the things that happen in the regular course of nature, we see that everything is arranged to help mankind flourish. So you can see that the entire world is built for the purpose of being a environment for mankind to grow and to experience and to live and to have adventures in. We say, blessed is he who has mercy on the earth. Everything that we see, rain, snow, wind, sunshine, helps the earth. Then it says, blessed is he who has mercy on the creatures. And this is from the daily morning prayers. Everything is also for the purpose of doing kindness to the people of the world. This means that the good that is being done for the benefit of the world is not being done at the expense of the well-being of mankind. I'll read that again. This means that the good that is being done for the benefit of the world is not being done at the expense of the well-being of mankind. Earlier, we remarked that the world may be compared to an apartment building that is owned by a kind landlord. The Creator is not like a landlord who cares solely for his apartment building and disregards the comfort of his tenants, denying them certain privileges out of concern for his property. Even when the human landlord repairs the roof or provides heat, he is solely interested in protecting his property from deterioration. Even when a human landlord repairs the roof or provides heat, he is solely interested in protecting his property from deterioration. But the Creator provides the needs of the earth for the benefit of the inhabitants with mercy. Every second, the sun converts 600 million tons of matter to pure radiant energy. The light and warmth that we receive from the sun are crucially important to us, yet the sun does not rise suddenly in the midst of darkness. The movement of the earth causes a gradual change from darkness to light to prevent injury to the eyes and for other merciful considerations. To achieve the well-being of all his creatures, Hashem keeps the sun at just the right distance from us. Had it been a little closer, a little further away, we could not survive. We could not survive. The same is true if the sun has been just a bit bigger or a bit smaller than it is. It is remarkable that everything in nature is exactly suited to allow mankind to exist happily. Even the variations in temperature that come upon the earth are always within intolerable limits so that mankind can exist. Everything in everything in the natural world is made for kindness. Everything in the natural world is made for kindness. This is an important point. The study of all these things that happen in the regular course of nature will show that everything is made in order to help mankind be successful in its existence. It is also through the sekel, the intellect, that we come to recognize our obligation to serve Hashem as it is fitting for him to be served and thanked. It is not enough for us to serve Hashem as a voluntary gesture, as though we are doing him a favor, and you can find plenty of apikorsut rabbis that are toting that and are quite successful and selling lots of books and getting a lot of hits on the internet. But the reality is, we're never doing him a favor. Get that out of your mind straight away. We must understand that we have a definite obligation to serve him in gratitude for what he has done in giving us life and sustaining us. We should be eager in our desire to repay him for his kindness to us. How eager are you to repay him for the kindness that he granted you by giving you 2 healthy legs and healthy feet and ankles and toes? How grateful are you and enthusiastic are you that he has given you fingers at the ends of hands, which come at the ends of articulating arms, that allow you to manipulate things and do fine detailed work? How enthusiastic and thankful and joyful are you that he gave you 2 ears to hear and 2 eyes to see? And not only that, they seem to keep working day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade. Okay, it's not until we maybe hit late 40s our eyes begin to deteriorate. But even then, we just slap on a pair of glasses and we're good to go. And even without the glasses, we can still do the majority of things. We can get a magnifying glass. I mean, not only has Hashem imbued us with amazing things that we can do in this environment, but he allows us to do them for such a long time. How can I repay Hashem for all that he did for me? We must not be like those who don't understand what he has done for them. Please don't be like someone that you don't, like the people that don't understand and they're angry. They feel like they're a victim. They feel like life isn't fair. Do not be one of these people. Don't walk around being the victim and making out life is fair. I don't care what's happened to you. Nothing that's happened to you, I don't care how horrific it is. You're probably going to try and sink my ship in the comments or whatever with all, oh yeah, but Jason, you don't know, I've had this. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't care if you're just a torso in an iron lung. It doesn't mean that Hashem lost management of you. He lost control of your life, and he's scrambling to try and regain some sort of control and interaction in your life again. Hashem never drops the ball. And if Hashem does something perhaps as extreme as that, heaven forbid, there is huge weight and purpose behind that. Huge weight and purpose behind that. So don't be one of these people that just walk around with a chip on their shoulder, like hating on the world. We need to open our eyes and see how many bad things could have happened to us. Every time you step in a car, you have to remember how dangerous it is that you're doing that. Every time you step in a car and ignite the engine and speed off, drive off, you have to realize that you are in a huge place of danger every time you are driving in a car. I don't want to scare people from driving, but it's just a reality. We're in such a hurry to get somewhere, we're prepared to risk our lives going down freeways and back alleys and intersections and roundabouts, and we have escaped unhappy fates only because Hashem is constantly protecting us. It's not until we pass away Hashem is going to show you all the times that He rescued you. And you're going to sit there and go, I didn't know. But you didn't know because you were just too busy being distracted by your Yetzer Hara, and you lost connection. Somewhere along the way you lost connection, and you had no desire to regain that connection until something bad happened. But it was too late. You're in the hospital asking to see the rabbi. Oh, there's a rabbi. Tell him to come to... You wouldn't have, in a million years, had time for a rabbi when, things are going well and you were Jack the Lad. We are so deeply indebted to Hashem that we surely have to serve Him. We are so deeply indebted to Hashem that surely we have to serve Him. At this point, it is worth noting that the author of Kavod HaLevavot has been defining Avodah in a limited sense as serving Hashem out of gratitude. So he's calling this a limited Avodah. But it means more. It also means that we must feel humble before Him because we have no way of repaying Him. We owe Him such a large debt of gratitude that we don't know where to begin. And that's so true. And therefore it is very important. And therefore it is a very important achievement of the Sekel for us to recognize that the obligation and to feel total, it is very important for us to recognize that obligation and to feel total abject humility before Hashem, like an eved, like a slave before his master. Some of us are so casual with the way we interact with the Creator, and we dress casually. We're in a pair of tracky dacks, and we're reading from a Siddur, and we've got a short sleeve shirt on, and we look a mess. Probably haven't brushed our teeth, and we're launching into prayer. What are you saying? Do you really expect to have an encounter with Hashem dressed like that and smelling like that? You have time, to actually go and have a shower and to put on something nice and then come to Hashem in prayer in a manner that is realistic in terms of the fact that what if you were to have an encounter with Hashem right now? Would you go and put something nice on? Something appropriate on? Of course you will. So you're going into prayer, supposedly to have an encounter with the Almighty, and you're in a singlet or a crop top, your hair's all over the place. What are we really saying here? Where are we really holding? We don't really think we're going to have a connection with Hashem because we wouldn't even dream to come before Him like we've attired ourselves. We owe Him such a large debt of gratitude that we don't know where to begin. We would express that feeling, and therefore it is very important to achieve. It is a very important achievement of the Sekel to recognize that obligation to feel total abject humility before Hashem, like an eved, like a slave before his master. We should express that feeling by saying, "What can I do to thank you, Hashem?" The mind that is employed for this purpose can achieve this success of feeling kiyuv of avodat Hashem, feeling the kiyuv of avodat Hashem. Of course, we have to thank our parents, we have to thank our teachers, we have to thank the policemen on the street, but we have to thank Hashem far above everyone else, because it was He who caused all others to be good to us when our parents fed their children and bestowed many benefits on them. It is actually the kindness of the Most High who inspires parents with the attitude of compassion for their children. He is the one who makes a mother love a child. He is the one who makes parents have pity on their children. He makes governments, and it is He who makes the law and order that allows us to live in peace. Hashem makes all these things, and therefore Hashem is the source for whatever we have. And if there are bad parents out there and there are corrupt governments, there is a reason that these manifest. But we're not against the institution of parenting, and we're not against the institution of government. We are just against bad parents and bad government. We want government. We want parents to set rules in their homes, but we just don't want corruption. But it is Hashem who, for the most part, provides most people with good parents and most nations with reasonable governments. People carry on about Australia as being a corrupt government, and I don't know what government isn't corrupt. Maybe there's one, you can put it in the comments. But there's countries that have more corruption than others, and so if your country is not as corrupt as maybe a lot of other countries, maybe you should be thanking Hashem for the government that you have, despite the fact that you can see that there's some things in it that aren't working properly. We could have a government that's way, way worse. Way, way, way worse than the one we've got now. And so maybe you whinging about the government every day is not a way to go. Instead, why don't you pray to Hashem for a better government, and also thank Him for the government that you have right now, even though you might be really angry with them. I'm telling you, I've been to third world countries, and I've seen in Egypt, I've seen their government, I've seen the corruption. I've been to Jordan, I've seen the corruption. I've even been to Israel, and I've seen how the government there, let's just say, isn't as good as it could be. I've been to Fiji, I've seen the corruption there. I've been to Dubai, I've seen the corruption there. So although we should be grateful to everybody who does us a favor, we should remember that nobody does anything unless Hashem motivates him. And therefore he is the one to whom all gratitude is owing. And because of his benefits granted toward mankind as a whole, and for those benefits that each person has received individually, all nations must praise Hashem, as is indicated in the verse. We're quoting from Psalm 117:1. Praise Hashem, all nations. But the next verse, verse 117:2, the next verse, for upon us, excuse me if I can read, for upon us his kindness has been overpowering. Do you realize all the things that Hashem continues to imbue you with, despite your lack of acknowledgement? All the things that Hashem continues to array you with every day, straight out of the gates. We recognize a debt of special thanks, and we have to thank Hashem even more because he did much more for us. Similarly, we thank Hashem every day for the luminaries. We thank Hashem for the cosmos, the moon and the sun. Blessed are you, Hashem, creator of the luminaries. Included in that thanks are all the benefits of creation, including the angels, whether physical or spiritual, or all are included in this thanksgiving except for the Torah. For his kindness to mankind, we say that his kindness is forever. His kindness is forever. But concerning Israel, we declare now, a great love you have loved us in particular. A great and succeeding pity you have bestowed upon us, in addition to the general benefits which we enjoy together with all men who possess the special benefit of the Torah. I saw a guy deliver a speech and was showing the statistics of Israel's achievements in the area of medicine and science, and the percentage of Israelis in the world, which is less than 1% of the world's population, and then juxtapose that to the percentage of Muslims in the world and their contribution to the sciences, and there was barely two individuals from the Muslim world since Islam's conception that have contributed on sort of Nobel Prize winning levels to the world of science, less than two. And then I think it's the Jewish world, who again, as I mentioned, is less than 1%, or less than 1% of the world's whole population. There's very few of them in the world. and they're in double figures in terms of their contribution to the world of medicine and science. And you just go, okay, wow, okay. There's there's evidence for this blessing that's been manifest on these people. Growth with action. What did Hashem do for you? Each person should think about what Hashem did for him individually. Look around and think of how many people have trouble marrying off their children. You should say, Baruch Hashem, my children have a good shidduchim. So if you have kids that are married and the marriage seems to be pretty good, you should be over the moon about that and thanking Hashem regularly for your kid having a happy marriage, being in a happy marriage. Not everybody has children, so the fact that you've got children, that's huge. So you should be saying, Baruch Hashem, I have children. Not everybody's children turn out to be good, so if your children are half decent, you should be saying, Baruch Hashem, my children are all good. Not everybody makes a living, Baruch Hashem, I'm making a living. Not everybody is able to walk, Baruch Hashem, I can walk. Look around you, so many people have different maladies. Baruch Hashem, there's literally thousands of things. There's hundreds and hundreds of cancers. How have you got to this age without having any cancer? You should be saying Baruch Hashem and jumping around and thanking Hashem that you've got to the age that you have without being diagnosed with any cancer. Or if you've had cancer, you've beaten the cancer. Baruch Hashem, you have so many individual things to be grateful for, and therefore the more you understand how you have been especially singled out for benefits, the more you owe Hashem and the more you are obligated to serve Him. And with this great gift of rational thinking, you can corroborate the truthfulness of Hashem's Torah that was given to Moshe as prophet. This might seem strange to many people. We have to thank Hashem for our sekel because it enables us to confirm in our minds the truthfulness of the Torah. It is certainly a mitzvah for all Jews to say they believe that Hashem gave us the Torah. However, the author of Kavod HaLevavot insists that we should do more than say it. We should, as much as possible, acquire a feeling of the historical reality that the Torah was given at Sinai. So we have to really think about that in a like it was an event. It wasn't just some fairy tale or fable. It should be as real to us as something we perceive with our senses. For example, we are fully convinced, for example, that there was once a man named George Washington who was the President of the United States. So just as much as you're taught that, this guy who did a few good things, if I can say that, he's probably did a lot of good things. There's a movie about him actually at the moment that came out recently in the last couple of weeks that coincide with America's anniversary of being a nation. I don't know what anniversary it was, but so if you believe that George Washington existed, you have to believe that there was a giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai that's just as real as the existence of that president. A seeker once asked a wise man to help him to believe, and the wise man asked him if he believed in George Washington, who was the President of the United States. Did you ever see him? Did you ever see anybody who knew him? So how do you know that he existed? The seeker responded that people told him about George Washington, and the wise man persisted. How many people actually knew of George Washington? The Chinese didn't know him, the Russians didn't know him. Only very few people knew about George Washington when he was alive. In contrast, all the Jewish people can testify to the existence of Moshe Rabbeinu, and that historical fact is confirmed by the Christians and the Muslims of the world who have independent traditions. So then, obviously this isn't a fairy tale if two religions that may be Abrahamic in nature in terms of their origin disagree on fundamental things in the Jewish world, and that yet they still hold that David and Melech existed. That Esther existed, that Paro existed, that Jonah existed, that all these people existed. And they're across different cultural realms. The Jewish people have an unbroken historical record from the time of Moshe. This begins with the books of the Tanakh. Shlomo HaMelech, who lived 400 years before Moshe Rabbeinu, talks about, after Moshe Rabbeinu, Shlomo HaMelech, who lived after Moshe Rabbeinu, 400 years after Moshe Rabbeinu, talks about what happened when the Jewish people came out of Mitzrayim and received the Torah. These were then quite recent events, and the entire nation didn't forget so quickly. The historian Josephus, many people criticize, what would you do if you were bearing down with the Roman armies? Anyway, that's a side note. He lived about 2,000 years ago at the time of the Korban Beit HaMikdash. He undertook a massive work in Greek explaining the history of the Jews to the general non-Jewish audience. He emphasized the Jewish culture and the Torah were older than any other then existing religion, and so he called his work the Jewish Antiquities. About 150 years before Josephus, in the year 3530, at the beginning of Beit Sheni, the Greek king of Egypt, Ptolemy II, asked 72 Jewish scholars to translate the Tanakh into Greek for inclusion in the Library of Alexandria. This translation, which became known as the Septuagint, derived from the Latin Septuaginta, which means 70, is still in existence. It was fully approved and corroborated by the governments of the world in that era and recognized as an authoritative document. The events in Har Sinai occurred in the year 2448, which from our perspective of today is 3,300 years ago. But when Josephus wrote to Shlomo, But when Josephus wrote about them, it was only 1,400 years before him. And when we look back to Shlomo HaMelech, it was only 400 years before him. Therefore, as we start thinking back through the historical record, the Torah becomes more and more real. It becomes less like a fairy tale. The same is true of many of the big events in our history. Their truth can be corroborated from our historical perspective. And so we see that with our sekel, it is easy to become a mamin, a believer in the truth of the Torah. The idea of using the sekel for this purpose is revolutionary. Some people might disagree, arguing that they already have imunah, a non-intellectual faith called imunah peshuta, but in most cases, that is merely an excuse not to do everything, or not to do anything. So, I don't need to get into that. I have faith. And, when you strip it down, it's just, they just don't want to do anything. It's an excuse. But in most cases, that is merely an excuse to do not to do anything. The author of Kivot HaLevavot is of the opinion that just as the mitzvah of being close to Hashem should be enhanced by reflection and observation, we also have a duty to strengthen our emunah through reflection and study of our history. When the Torah was being given, imagine one man saying, "I prefer to lie down in my tent." I have full trust in you, Hashem. Hashem, you do what you need to do. I'm going to have a sleep in the tent. You wake me when it's over, when the giving of the Torah is over. They would have replied, "You must come. You're missing the opportunity of a lifetime. It's not enough just to believe what other people tell you. You have an opportunity and an obligation to hear with your own ears." Similarly, the author of Kivot HaLevavot insists that as much as possible, we need to have a concrete physical awareness of these great events in our history. So this is like absorbing them as a reality, as if they just occurred yesterday, and not kind of compartmentalizing these events, and looking at them as, something from the by and by era. It's a different dispensation. Things are different now, because that's what it leads to if you don't look at them at a hard reality, as a hard reality. We say every day the Brakah, in the weekday Shmoneh Esrei, you favor man with knowledge. Basically, we are thanking Hashem for our sanity. In addition, we ask for higher degrees of thinking power, knowledge, understanding, and wise conduct. But we conclude by thanking Hashem for favoring us with da'at, which essentially refers to our ability to reason. Many people are suffering from lack of da'at. Some are half-witted or worse, and they and they lead tragic, wasted lives. So they can't absorb knowledge. Some are half-witted, or worse, they live tragically wasted lives. The author wants us to understand how great the gift of having a normal mind really is. So by the end of this video, this is my goal, that the viewer come away with a completely renewed vigor and gratefulness towards their complex, beautiful mind that Hashem has given you. Okay, you've been dragging it through the mud through the years. Who hasn't? Many have, right? Now it's time to pull it out and give it a clean. People talk about, I don't want to get brainwashed. I don't know what people have against having a clean brain, but anyway, that's just me. So you want to finish this video and go, you know what? I want to thank you, Hashem, for my mind. Now, I'm not as smart as I'd like to be. Could I be learning more and studying more and putting in more effort to become smarter? Yes. Am I doing that? No. Well, then I can't be too upset with how smart I am, because it doesn't seem to be disturbing me enough to want to actually increase my knowledge and understanding, and become a smarter person and find ways and means and avenues around just being able to be a quick thinker and being more quick-witted and being able to retain information. I'm not so preoccupied with wanting to acquire that, so I can't be too upset with my brain where it is and my level of intelligence. And the level of intelligence that I've got is amazing. And have I really sat down and thanked Hashem for my mind? No. Now you will be. You'll be doing it daily. You'll be doing it daily. In recognition of that gift, we should be consciously thanking Hashem every day when we say the Brakah. It surely should not be recited as a mindless routine or habit. People who lose their sanity and then regain it feels endless joy and gratitude to Hashem. People who lose their sanity and then regain it feel endless gratitude, joy and gratitude to Hashem. It's not until you actually lose something, the ability to walk, the ability to speak, that you realize how valuable it is to do those things. And then when you get them, you're finally acting in a way that's appropriate. And sometimes that has to happen. And I pray, and I hope and I pray that it never happens to anybody. But the reality is, many people, they just won't understand how many things they've been given and how grateful they should be until tragedy strikes and something has to be temporarily taken away, heaven forbid. It is only to the degree that a person has intelligence and discernment that the Creator may he be exalted, holds him to an accounting and is strict with him. Hashem does not make an accounting of the deeds of cattle because they are not responsible. Animals have no sekel. Similarly, the actions of an insane person are essentially meaningless. If he is insane part of his life, that part is lost. If he is insane all of his life, then an entire life is lost. Hashem evaluates the deeds of people who have minds. This accounting places a very great burden of the responsibility on each individual, but at the time is a very great asset, because when we know how responsible we are to Hashem, we will make an attempt to improve our behavior. And so the fact that you have a mind means you're eligible to be judged, which means you are eligible to attain great heights of closeness with Hashem that people or animals that don't have minds can't. And so instead, the majority of people who do have a mind think exactly the opposite, and they don't like the thought of judgment because they're not even thinking about doing Hashem's will. So, you become aware that the majority of mankind is actually operating in the opposite way that they should. Instead of rejoicing in the fact that they have a sound mind and that they can therefore make decisions and undergo tests and succeed in missions and pass tests and therefore attain higher levels of attachment to Hashem and more rewards in the Olam Haba, the world that comes after this, they're like, no, I don't like it. No, they get involved in hobbies or sport or whatever. It is because of our intelligence that we are able to become better and become better. And becoming better is the purpose of life. Our mission is to become better because we know we are answerable to Hashem. It's not to become richer. It's not to have a beautiful partner. Although these things aren't evil in and of themselves, but that's not the goal. The goal is not to, have the most toys. He who has the most toys wins, I don't know if you've heard that expression. To summarize, because a man has a zakel, he must account for his actions, and Hashem demands of him a careful reckoning. He demands of him a careful reckoning. A person who understands that reacts by using his zakel to improve himself and to achieve a higher level of service to Hashem. That is the purpose of life. So what's the meaning of life? That you come to this earth and that you repair and restore those things of you that are broken and that are poor. And you draw closer to Hashem in achieving those goals of improving those traits that are askew, that are awry. And so a lot of it boils down to just basic human decency. You're getting all wrapped up in the Mosaic law and you can't even be a decent husband or father. You're not an honest member of the workforce and you want to learn how to keep Shabbat. You want to learn how to keep Shabbat and you're stealing from your workplace. There's some sort of opposing forces being at play there that need to be addressed first. When a person is afflicted in his zakel, in his mind, all the human virtues depart from his mind. Such a person doesn't have the qualities of bashfulness and gratitude. He doesn't understand who can help him and who can't hurt him. You see homeless people wandering around, and their pants are sort of down around their knees, and they're walking around. They don't care. They don't have any ability to exercise shame. This man is actually worse than animals, because although they lack intellect, Hashem has given animals instincts by which they can live successfully on their level. But a man who doesn't have intelligence doesn't have self-protective instincts either. Therefore, he is unable to cope with the challenges of life and is more helpless than the animals. And so that's what you see when you see homeless people on the street. Essentially, they've put themselves in a position where they're even in a lesser state than animals. I'm not calling them animals. I would only call somebody that if they acted like a savage animal. In most cases, when people act savagely, they're acting worse than animals, and that's actually giving animals a bad name. They're more like monsters. But I'm not saying that homeless people are bad. I'm just saying, I'm not saying, the Torah is saying that they're sort of set even below the actual setting of animals who can function quite successfully on instinct. But these people on the street, they can't maintain hygiene, they can't read a form and pay a bill, they can't maintain records, they can't. This is why a lot of people, when they are pulled off the street and given homes, within 3 months they're back out on the street because they can't absorb the concept of how to pay a bill, of how to fill out and read a form, or even have the patience to have anyone read it to them. And making even somebody who goes to the point where they sort of dumb down daily living and paying for an apartment and buying groceries, even to the point where it's almost all done for them. They feel confined and restricted and contained in the apartment, and it doesn't feel right to them. Their minds are off. And so you're trying to put a square block in a round hole with a lot of these homeless people. Some end up getting fixed up, but most, they're back out on the streets because their mind has to be fixed. Their mind has to be seen to if it's even at all possible. Totally lost where I was up to. He is also free from mitzvot and from both reward and punishment. Okay, so therefore he's unable to cope with the challenges of life. He's more helpless than animals. He's also free from mitzvot and from both reward and punishment. Now, having said that, he's free from any type of reward or punishment, which most people go, oh yeah, that sounds like it might be all right. And so most people, because of lack of effort that they want to put into improving themselves, if you got them off to the side, they would say, I'd prefer to just be on the same level as an animal. And so, you know what? That can actually be arranged. And once you're an animal with a human neshama in the body of an animal, yeah, then let's see how you're going to enjoy it, because it's not a very good existence. How do you know, Jason? No. Well, if I was given amnesia, but from all accounts, it's not to have a human neshama being transmigrated into the body of a horse or a dog. Yeah. What people want is they want to be human beings in terms of being able to have all the faculties that a human has, but be out of the equation and be able to not be able to sidestep the reason for being on earth. And they can just have fun while they're here. That's the reality. That's what a lot of people want to do. They just want to have fun while they're here, and that's how they're living. Now, being free from punishment is not a source of happiness. We were very happy to receive mitzvot for which we would be held responsible, and even though the failure to observe the mitzvot has serious consequences, the opportunities for doing Hashem's will are so great that it's worth taking the chance. For instance, if we were confronted with the possibility of ending our lives, we would choose to die in order... let me read this carefully. For instance, if we were confronted with the possibility of ending our lives, would we choose to die in order not to risk doing sins? No, we would choose life, even though there is a great risk, because life gives us the opportunity to achieve immense wealth as long as we are careful to avoid sin. So not all, but most human beings, despite the fact they know that every day they're accruing loads and loads of sins, will want to continue to live, despite the fact they've got themselves into a lifestyle where, as each day passes, there's a million sins that have been added to their account. Because, there's a hope that maybe that will, that a million will be sort of truncated down to, I don't know, 6,000 sins. Like, that's a huge drop, but yet anything, as long as they can have an opportunity to live another day, to maybe have a day where they do less sins, if not considerably less sins. Among the benefits of intelligence is that it gives man the ability to perceive the world both through his senses and through his intellect. Sensory perception makes it possible for the mind to experience great joy in this world. We see the pleasures of sunlight, and so we thank Hashem. He makes great luminaries, for his kindness endures forever. When we see our children or our grandchildren, we're very happy. It is the sensory perception of nechat, which we mentioned before. And one of the things that people might not realize is that when you see the face of a baby, it's an entity that has come into the world that at that point has no sins. And so it is very relaxing, and it makes a person's cares and worries go away if they look into the face of a baby. So it's a very interesting concept. So if you want to sort of calm down a little bit, get in touch with your grandchildren if they've got babies, and spend some time with your baby grandchildren, and you'll be feeling much better almost instantly. There are many other pleasures that our eyes are able to confer on our minds, such as when we look into a sefer with our eyes so we can learn with our mind. And that goes without saying, to be able to see enables you to be able to learn and to learn more Torah. A fool looks at things, but they don't mean anything to him. He can see a criminal suffer, but doesn't draw the lesson that he is being punished for his crimes. When he sees a man with one leg, he doesn't connect the man's condition with his foolhardiness in hanging onto the back of a speeding car, hanging on the back of speeding cars just to show off. Our eyes are constantly showing us that foolishness and wickedness do not pay, but that lesson can only be drawn when our minds are attentive and reflect on what we see. We also see people who are happy because they live virtuously and righteously. Happiness is a result of living properly. This is a lesson that our eyes can teach. This is a lesson that our eyes can teach. Happiness is a result of living properly. That's beautiful. In addition to perceptions based on the senses, there are abstract perceptions that are not directly based on what has been physically sensed. These include the ability to understand our history, the great lives of our forefathers, our ideals, our principles, and the way Hashem conducts the world. If a parent doesn't have intelligence, he won't be able to have these perceptions. So we thank Hashem for all the gifts that we are able to acquire by means of the mind. Growth in action section, davening. This is prayer. There is tremendous difference between the davening of an average person who is happy with his davening and the true potential of davening as it should be. After you study Kivot Halevavot, you experience a whole new level of meaning when you say the bracha. You now know, thank you Hashem, that I'm not behind bars, I'm not in a straitjacket. There are many people who are in padded cells because they might hurt themselves or even kill themselves if left alone. In the halls of insane asylums, hundreds of people congregate like herds of lost cattle. They are worse than cattle because at least cattle have instincts. And so when you study Kavot Halevavot, any expression of thanks in our prayers has to be a different kind of davening. It is the difference between day and night. And one of the best things that ever happened to me, I didn't like it at the time, is in my first marriage, we went to visit my ex-wife's cousin who was working as a nurse in a nursing home up at Lithgow, not Lithgow, at Lura. And we went into the actual home, the nursing home was converted to a nursing home, and we got to look around and see where she worked, and we got to see all the patients, and it was just a horrifying experience, but it was a valuable experience to me because you could see all these people with mental health issues near the end of their life, and we went out the back, and then some of them were just sitting in the sun, just sort of looking up at the sky, with nothing really sort of going on. I think I remember seeing an Aboriginal person who was, dressed as a woman with a little handbag sort of shuffling along the corridor with a wig on. And I was just, I was like, wow, is this what happens to us when when it's time for us to hit the nursing home? And there were even like people that weren't that old that had mental illness that were in this nursing home as well. And we walked past the cafeteria, and there was people in there, people sort of just, drooling into their food. And then there was like one lady, she was being helped along with this truss with two nurses helping her, and she had this huge nappy on, and you could sort of smell urine, and it was just like, and the cousin pointed out where the morgue was. When they die, we put them in the morgue. That's basically a room that's a refrigerator, and it's just like, whoa. But I encourage everybody and anybody to go through that experience, because it makes you think how grateful you are to have all your faculties and to be able to, and to look after them, and to not like throw caution to the wind as you get older, but to maintain your mental and physical health. I'll never forget it, and I'll never probably tell you everything exactly that I saw, but I kind of have, but it was just like, wow. And I was sort of like quiet for ages afterwards. And it was funny because it didn't seem to affect my ex-wife. She was just like, yeah, but I was like, It reminded me when I went to England and I went to the War Memorial there, and they had a Holocaust exhibition on the second or third level. And it was one of the most comprehensive Holocaust exhibitions I'd seen. This was before I went to Israel in 2008. This is 2002, not long after September 11. And it sort of kind of ruined my holiday, because I went and had a look at this Holocaust exhibition, and I was just like, ooh. And this is before I'd really started to understand about the Jews and everything. I was still pretty much in Christianity back then. And it plagued me all day, because there was huge photos blown up on the walls and things, and there was models and dioramas of, there was even a game, like a Milton Bradley game of a board game of getting Jews onto trains and getting the trains to the concentration camps. It was a board game. But it was a good experience, because it made me realize, okay, we need like a bucket of cold water on our heads. And even if you're on a holiday, it made me think about important things, even while I was on that holiday. And normally we can go on holidays and think about frivolous things. So it Maybe that was Hashem's way of protecting me while I was on the holiday. Because I could never my thoughts were never that far away from the horrors of that era. And we're heading for that now. We're heading into that now. Kristallnacht, 9 Jews died, which kicked off the Holocaust, Night of Broken Glass, and we have October 7, over 2,000 Jews were killed and over 200 were taken hostage. So goodness only knows the holy hell that's coming now compared to the Holocaust back in the 30s and 40s. Like, it's just, oh my gosh, it's just like nothing compared to what's going to come. Anyway, where am I up to? There are many people who are in padded cells because they might hurt themselves or even kill themselves if left alone. In the halls of insane asylums, hundreds of people congregate like herds of lost cattle. Yes, we've read all that. Before, you were just saying from words with from intentions, but you did not really understand the purpose, which is to thank Hashem for the great gift of making you normal. We all know people who are not normal. When I was a boy, I had contemporaries who were not normal. Life passed them by and they got lost. Their lives were ruined. With normal intelligence, a person is capable of living. He's even capable of more than just living. I remember there was a guy who went to a Catholic school not far from where I lived, St. Columbus. And he was this thin guy and he had something wrong with him. And he would sort of kind of walk like a puppet when he walked. And he was, very shy guy. Obviously there was something wrong with him, and he lived with his grandparents. His parents were nowhere to be seen. I never ever think I saw his parents. And he went on to go to St. Columbus High, and eventually his grandparents died, and we never saw him after that. He probably went into a home. And I knew another guy in my street who went to St. Columbus, and he used to occasionally talk and say hello to him. I'll never forget that guy. He was a really nice guy, but he was obviously, not the full, and he needed to be cared for. I was used to worry about him walking home, because back in those days you'd walk everywhere, even if it was a couple of miles, and he'd have his little backpack on, and it was a private school, so they're all decked out to the nines with all their gear. But yeah, after his grandparents died, we never saw him again. I don't even know if he'd still be alive, because he was a couple of years older than me. He was 2 or 3 years older than me, I think. Through Sekel, we can see that which is concealed from his physical senses, like the movement of a shadow or the action of a drop of water on a rock of flint. We look at the shadow and we don't see it moving, but it is moving. A half hour later, the shadow has changed position because the sun has moved. Our minds absorb this phenomenon and understand that the shadow is moving. Thus, our minds can give us information about the world that we cannot see with our eyes. That means a person whose mind is deficient can see many things, but doesn't grasp their importance, their meaning, or how they fit together. However, a person with some intelligence understands to tie together causes and effects, and therefore his understanding even of simple things is far better than what a fool sees and doesn't understand at all. Flint is extremely hard. When a drop of water falls on such a material, it doesn't see any effect at all, but we know that it does have an effect because 10 years later, if we come back, we see that the continued dripping of many such drops have made an impression in the stone. So each drop carries away an infinitesimal part of the stone. This is like Rabbi Akiva, when he saw the water dripping on the stone, the water had bored a hole right through the rock. And this was one of the major catalysts and motivators pushing Rabbi Akiva to do what his future wife, his fiance, was encouraging him to become a learner of Torah. Oh, to have a wife that wants you to learn Torah and is so motivated for you to do that. What a gift that would be. What a blessing that would be. So Rabbi Akiva had this. Oh no, we're about to read about him now. Okay, let me just read the text. Although we can't see it with our eyes, we have no doubt about it, because otherwise it would not have caused a hollow out basin in the rock. Rabbi Akiva of the Mishnah, excuse me, once saw a rock that was hollowed out. He inquired and was told that the hollow was a result of a steady drip of water falling onto the rock. A mind that has intelligence can grasp the significance of such a lesson, whereas a mind that is deficient loses all such lessons. These are only examples of many important lessons that a person who doesn't have intelligence will miss. So Rabbi Akiva, seeing that water can actually best rock, you think, well, what's more powerful, water or rock? Surely rock will win a fight. Well, if water just continues to hit the same spot, it will actually put a hole right through the rock. So he reasoned that if the water can penetrate rock, then the Torah could penetrate his heart. And at that time he didn't have a very positive view of the Jewish sages. He hated them. And through the Sekel, he can differentiate between truth and falsehood, and between what is excess and what is insufficient. Recognizing falsehood is not a small thing, because our lives are full of such conflicts. The world is full of sheker, falsehood, and we need intelligence to be able to ferret out the truth and recognize it. It's so true. A person without Sekel can be persuaded to believe in any kind of stupidity, and that's why the people who recruit candidates for cults have most success with ignorant and stupid fellows. Look at the Heaven's Gate videos. It's online now. You can watch the whole video of the leader of the Heaven's Gate cult deliver a lecture, and at some point, I don't know what point it is in the video, they scan the camera around, and it's like sort of 1980s sort of footage, 1990s, I don't know when they all killed themselves. And they all sort of introduce themselves, and they're all wearing these jumpsuits with these, Heaven's Gate away team badges. And you can see these people sitting there in these jumpsuits. They're not all there. Their driveway doesn't go all the way to the road. They're all a couple of cans short of a six-pack. That's the expression. You can see when the camera pans around and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. These people aren't all there. Particularly the guy, the thin sort of gaunt sort of, wily-eyed leader. And he basically just talks nonsense for the best part of an hour. Maybe a bit over an hour. He's not saying anything really over the top or profound. You think that they want to kind of tell the world that, we're part of another species of entities and blah, 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 and they're going to blow your mind with all this, but it was just like, nah, but they're all sort of locked in this cult of personality. If these fellows had intelligence, they would ask why so many people are not following these cults. Where are the cults in history? What great achievements did they make? So ultimately, they just cater for this sort of low class of individual who has a very limited attachment to their sekel. And I know some people are smarter than others, but even somebody who's not so smart can increase in his smarts. People don't realize, well, I'm just not a smart person. That's no excuse. You can actually increase in intelligence. It's not like you're short and you can never be tall. If you're not so smart, if you want to be smart, you can. A person without Sekel, obviously some people you can tell that will never happen. They've got mental illness or something. But on the whole, the majority of cases you can. You just have to have a desire to want to learn. A person without Sekel can yield to the persuasions of falsehood. For example, somebody may encourage him to join in a drinking party. Without intelligence, he doesn't understand that drinking can ruin a person's life. Or somebody may suggest that he experiment with some chemical substance. He'll get high for a little while and have some fun. He doesn't understand that he'll become a slave to a drug and ruin his life. And I've seen that firsthand. I've seen alcoholism ruin a person's life firsthand, and it is devastating. It is devastating. It's life-changing, and it's just changes the person. It is the fools who become victims of sheker, falsehood. A person who has intelligence knows the emet, the truth, and wouldn't even touch a cigarette. He knows the result of being addicted to smoking. Sheker is reckoning on all sides. Weakened personalities are constantly subjected to invitations to self-destructive behavior, especially sinful behavior that sounds superficially attractive. To assist such invitations, a person has to be mentally prepared, and only an intelligent mind can be prepared. So we see how great a gift it is to have sekel. It is only with sekel that a person can distinguish between what is true and what is false. And of course, that's the most important function of the sekel. Without sekel, we would be living with false ideas, and false ideas mean a ruined life in everything physical and spiritual. And I think we'll leave it there. That takes us to page 316. There's a little note here. It is for this reason that the author is spending a lot of time on this subject. He wants us to know that a person who is a servant of Hashem has a big obligation to constantly thank him for our normal minds. He should make sure to utilize these opportunities when we say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ha-derech. In every aspect of life, a person needs to make a balanced judgment. Avoid extremes. For example, if he is loading his boat, his sekel will tell him that too many passengers or too much merchandise will cause the boat to sink. On the other hand, if there is not enough ballast to weigh down the boat, it might tip over when the wind blows. Those who lack sekel are unable to judge what is too much or too little. And I've actually just started off again, and I said I would finish. I'm going to finish there, and we'll have to go mid-flight in the next audio. This is a big subject, and oh gosh, we're so close. No, let's keep going. This is going to be a long video. I don't care. All right, we've got 1.5 more pages, or roughly 2 pages. Through sekel, a person can also differentiate between what is beneficial and what is harmful, between what is commendable, appropriate behavior, and the objectionable, bad, or disgraceful behavior, and between what is possible and unrealistic. And through the sekel, he can put other living creatures to work for his benefit and his pleasure. If a man didn't have sekel, he wouldn't be able to use his donkey to ride on. The donkey would have as much sekel as he does. With sekel, he can get milk from cows and eggs from chickens. He can use his horse to pull his wagon. All living things become subservient to man because he has more sekel. And with the sekel, a person can discern the positions of the stars, and he can estimate the distance relative to each other and their movement in their orbits, Even though he may not have an immediate need to know these figures, he should appreciate that the sekel is capable of far-reaching calculations. For thousands of years, being familiar with the stars was very important for people traveling on open seas, but there is no landmarks in the ocean, and the only way of navigating was by looking at the fixed stars. But for this, they had to be able to recognize the positions of the stars in the sky, and they also had to adjust for the time of night, since the stars move across the sky as the earth rotates. And it was only the ability to reason that enabled them to do that. And with the sekel, he can understand the valuations and comparisons that are used in the science of mathematics. He can also understand the forms of logical proof in the art of debate. The art of logical proof is a subject by itself. In order to make something understandable and convincing a person needs to know how to present it properly. So if you want to try and convince somebody of the truth of the Torah, you need to be able to arrange like a cohesive argument. You need to be able to present yourself in a way that people can understand what you're saying. He needs to establish his premises, and from the premises he can show how to draw forth conclusions. He can also understand other sciences and arts too numerous to mention. Even though a monkey has hands, can never teach him how to put a pair of shoes. Even though a monkey has hands, he can never teach him how to put a pair of shoes together. He will never understand how to take the right kind of leather, softer leather here and harder leather there. He will not comprehend how to make soles, how to sew the parts together and where to make the holes. People have tried every possible method to teach monkeys and haven't succeeded. The whole idea is impossible because a monkey doesn't have seichel. A monkey can never be taught to weave. It can't even be taught to spin thread. All the chokmah, wisdoms that we utilize in our daily lives are based on our ability to think. It is only because of our seichel that we have all the conveniences and all the implements that we need to build our homes and to grow our food. And so it is with man's other personal qualities beside the seichel. When we examine them, you will find that they are perfect in the way they serve his needs, just as we mentioned for the seichel. All the human abilities and faculties are remarkable in the dexterity by which they are able to adapt to his needs. I'll read that again because I sort of didn't do a good job. All the human abilities and faculties are remarkable in the dexterity by which they are able to adapt to his needs. These gifts are so arranged that they are of the greatest possible benefit. And we will leave it there. That takes us to page 318. Gosh, we got through a lot today. Woohoo! Thank you so much for joining me. Man, if you lasted this far, you are somebody to look out for. Well done. Thank you so much for joining me. What's the next topic? The next topic is the gift of speech. That's going to be interesting. Anyway, until next time. Oh, what's my secret word? Secret word. The secret word is forehead. Something left field. Forehead. All the best in arraying that in a sentence. I have a guy that watches these videos religiously. I'm very grateful. His name is Derek. Hi, Derek. Shalom Aleichem. And he's really good at doing the secret words and putting them into a sentence in the comments below. All the best with forehead today, Derek. I hope you can come up with a relevant comment to the content of this video and utilize the word forehead. Anyway, until next time, thanks for watching and bye for now.